Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to Tamar Suvai. My name is RJ Sudha, the founder and anchor of Tamar Suvai Radio. Today, we have two very accomplished women. I should not just say accomplished; they're also very compassionate women. They are from the Narika Foundation here in the San Francisco Bay Area. Narika is a very compassionate organization. They offer a free supportive services organization for survivors of domestic violence and abuse, specifically in the South Asian community. And it was founded in 1992 by 6 Indian immigrant women. I'm sure there are many friends and relatives in your circle who come to you and say with a lot of hesitance, saying, my husband abuses me, or you have even heard of some friends or relative story, or who come to women, especially who come from India here married to somebody, and then they realize that the man is already married or having an affair or something, or they come here and they get abused in a married situation, and you're helpless. You don't know how to help them. You can just give them solace. You can probably give them shelter for a few days, but what is the long-term solution for them? And invariably, those are the women who are not self-sufficient. They're probably not educated. They don't have the proper visa, especially coming over from India to here. You need the proper visa to work here or be independent. What if the person you're married to, who you're dependent on, dumps you with the no money, no visa status, no job, nothing at all, and on top of it you have children on top? What do you do? How do you help them? But that's when Narika comes in the picture. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome two very accomplished and at the same time very compassionate women from Narika, Prabha Viswanathan and Bindu Fernandez. Prabha Viswanathan is a domestic violence advocate, and Bindu is executive director of Narika. Welcome, Prabha and Bindu. How are you ladies doing?
Thank you, Sudha. Thank you for having us here today.
Sure. So, Prabha or Bindu, one of you can answer the questions that I'm going to be asking you. Could you tell me what is the very purpose of Narika, and when was it started? I know it was started in 1982. What is the mission behind Narika?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So one, again, we're so excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting us. So the mission was really to serve domestic violence survivors, specifically in the South Asian community. Now, what's very important and what our founders knew when they started close to 3 decades ago was that our South Asian women have additional complexities when they are trying to flee abuse or when they're in a domestic violence situation. And I'm sure we'll get into some of the additional issues that our South Asian clients face, some of it related to immigration, some of it related to language barriers, or even understanding their resources that are available, fear of law enforcement. There's a lot of additional issues that our South Asian communities in the US or in the Bay Area may face, which are different from other survivors of domestic violence. And so really the mission statement was that, how do we provide services for clients who have additional issues? How do we provide it in an informal sisterhood sort of way, while taking into consideration many things like language access and so on. So that's really how the mission of Narika started many, many years ago. And we've stayed true to that. We've really stayed true to making sure that our communities are able to reach out to Narika as a trusted organization for any of the services that are provided. So I think the most important thing to share about our services are that all our services are free. They are confidential, which means that anything that comes to our organization is not retold to anyone else. It's not retold to law enforcement. It's not retold to immigration authorities. It's not being said to anyone. So as an organization,
okay.
Yes, absolutely, right? That we just make sure that we hold the confidentiality and the privacy of each client very, very carefully, and that we are not involving other groups, and we're able to support the person within the organization.
Okay.
Yeah.
You talked about so many services, right? Could you name a few services that you're talking about?
Yes. So the first main service we have really is a crisis line that people can call into. So it is a toll-free number. It's on our website. It's a 1-800 number, which is on our website. And that number, people can call in if they've been a victim of domestic violence, or if they are, say, a friend or a well-wisher of someone who's affected by domestic violence, who may also ask questions.
Yeah. Okay. You don't have to call. Okay.
And because many times we know somebody, maybe it's happening to a sister, maybe it's happening to an employee, it's happening to someone so even you as a well-wisher or a friend can call into the line and reach out and ask for services or ask for how you can support your friend, but primarily again intended for those who are affected by domestic violence to call in. As I said, they can call in, talk to one of our advocates, Prabha included, and really, and our advocates are able to support them with all the pieces they need. So sometimes clients need support with counseling, sometimes clients need support with jobs help, sometimes they're looking for support with legal or housing, emergency shelter. There's a lot of different things someone experiencing domestic violence might need. And it is really the role of our advocates to ensure that we're advocating for that person. And that's why the name is the way it is, that the advocates are there to advocate for that client and to support them through that entire journey, as long as it takes, even if it takes many years, that the advocates are there for them. So that's one of the main services. We have a crisis line and case management connected to it. Another big program that we run is our job training program. So it's also for free. If there are clients who are affected by domestic violence that are looking to move towards financial empowerment and financial stability, we're able to support them through a period of 8 to 10 weeks long and support them with really one-on-one coaching in financial literacy and financial support. And one of the new programs that we started in COVID-19 was our food justice program. And the food justice program really started when many of our single moms came to us and said, we have lost our jobs during COVID-19. We don't have food and groceries to put on the table for our children. And so really we started this program March of 2020 saying we will provide weekly groceries and toiletries and hygiene items for our clients. So this program happens in the Fremont office, which means that if anyone knows somebody who is a survivor of domestic violence and are able to come to our Fremont office, we're able to support our community with free groceries and free resources. Of course, we have other programs, but those are some of the main big ones.
That's excellent. That is excellent. So when it comes to domestic violence or domestic violence or abuse categories, from what I've seen or heard, abuse can be a physical abuse or even verbal abuse. It can be like verbally abusing a partner, or sometimes beating a partner because something because of lack of a dowry. Dowry system, although for all theoretical and practical purposes, it's all erased from our history. You still hear a sprinkling of noise here and there, and verbal abuse is constantly, you hear about it, even from the top-notch CEOs or something. We hear once in a while in the Indian community that we still hear about them. What are the common warning signs that a relationship is really getting into this borderline abusive situation, and when is the right time to get out of that living area and call Marika?
Okay. I don't think there is any, like, to say good time. I mean, it is always a good time to recognize that you're being abused, right? But really, like, we talk a lot about physical abuse and verbal abuse, but in fact, there are more ways of control. Domestic violence is nothing but it's a pattern of power and control, right? It's just so that they can intimidate and create fear within the partner's mind. That's basically what it is. So that can be verbal, physical. It can even be, in many cases, it's also financial abuse and sexual abuse, right? Sexual abuse. And many people think among married partners, what is there to be? But there is marital rape in married couple too. And there is also very specific to immigrant communities. Immigration can become an abusive one too, right? So physical abuse.
You kind of blackmail the visa status, right?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Blackmail, a blackmail, withhold, right? The visa status. That's very specific to the South Asian or any immigrant community, actually. And regarding like financial abuse, we are not talking about big gifts and stuff, right? We're talking about basic needs, like
exactly.
food, healthcare, like the partner may not provide proper health care. If they need, sometimes after your deductible is met, you still have to pay some money, and they may refuse to pay that money to support the client.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's even putting food on the table, even if it's not about whether they have money or not. It's about, I buy the grocery, I decide what you get to eat in the house, right? And everything, even some clients have even not been able to buy sanitary napkins.
Oh my God.
So it's as basic as that.
So it is not going to the extent of beating up the partner or verbally abusing. It is taking care of the fundamental needs of the wife, right? Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
And most of this is not on its own always. Most of the time it's a combination of more than two things, more than one thing. It's not, physical abuse alone doesn't happen. It happens in combination, right? And also emotional abuse. It's, of late we hear the term gaslighting a lot, right? Gaslighting and threatening your family, and belittling the partner so much, oh, you're not good enough for this, or body shaming, right?
Yeah.
All this is like clear emotional abuse, and even sexual abuse. It's like, you don't, it's like force them to do sexual acts they don't want to do, or when they don't want to, forcing them to do it. So all this is happens most of the time in combination, not on its own. And it happens on its own too, but as a combination most of the time, right? Yeah. So recognizing all this, right? How do you go about recognizing it? Yeah, all this is like, we have to, most of the time, I think initially, we have very few clients who recognize it like few days after their marriage. It takes them many years to, some of them many years, in fact, to recognize that, oh my God,
To come out and seek help is another stage, right?
yeah, because sometimes they're not even sure what's happening to them, you know, and they're also in fear what would happen if they open their mouth and come out and say such things. And many of my clients who've been in an abusive situation have said, oh, I didn't know something like Narika existed, so that awareness, knowing that a place like Narika exists for them to come and open up, and it's confidential and they can get help in many forms, I think it's really important.
Absolutely.
And just to clarify, like one thing to add is that people can call us at any stage as they're experiencing abuse. We've had, so there is no, I want to confirm that if someone says, I'm not ready to leave, they can still call us at any stage. If they're still thinking, I don't know if what I'm experiencing is abuse, or if they're like, I'm ready to leave, or sometimes it is years after abuse, they may want support. Any of these stages, if someone has been affected by abuse, they can call us at any stage. It's not necessary that we only serve people who leave or people who stay. We're fine serving anybody who's affected by intimate partner violence or abuse at any of these stages, however they want. So really the client or the person reaching us dictates what they want out of the conversation and the sessions with our counselors. And so they can say, hey, my goal for today is just to make sure that I de-escalate situations if anything happens at home. So depending on their goals that they establish with each advocate, they are able to be supported through that. And so there is no just one agenda. It is always an agenda that is set by the person calling us.
Right. Can I go a little deeper and ask you a question that is probably out of syllabus of what we spoke, slightly digressing. Let's assume that a person, abusive husband, doesn't take care of even the basic needs of a wife and abuses her in any many ways, more than, as you said, more than one way, or maybe multiple ways. And she reaches out to Narika, and Narika gives her gives her so many ways to be self-dependent, gives her vocational training or whatever in some other ways. But at the same time, Narika, as they learn, they understand the personality of the husband, or rather the partner in this case, they find out that the person whom this lady is married to or living with is a psychiatric person. Do you deal with that other person? Do you report that person to a psychiatric doctor or whatever it is, or is the scope of treatment only confined to the lady that was seeked out to Narika?
So yeah, the scope of services are limited to who reaches out to us for help.
Okay.
It is not necessary it has to be a woman. That's also a myth. Sometimes there are men who are abused in families, and there are males who have come to us and actually sought services, and we're able to support them.
Okay.
On the other hand, I think what you're speaking about is the person who's causing harm. Are there services for it? There are definitely services. It's often outside the scope of Narika. So it could be through a marriage counselor, it could be through anger management classes. There's a lot of other programs that person can take. But often what can happen is we may talk to the client and say, okay, does that person want to change? Are they looking for change? Are they looking for programs? We can help you find programs, but then really that person has to make that decision for themselves, right? We can't really particularly tell them. It's also outside our scope. As I shared before, it's outside our scope to report anything. So we it's a protocol and a policy that we will not report, primarily because all of these are decisions that person has to make.
Absolutely.
And so the programs are very focused and centered on the client. And if the client wants to involve the police, she can involve the police, or he can involve the police, but it's not our scope. And so we kind of steer away from that. But yes, all of these services, especially mental health. And by the way, there's a big stigma around mental health. We know this, especially in the South Asian community, that it's difficult for our South Asian communities to accept the idea of going to therapy, going to counseling. It's an integral part many times of healing for all of our clients. So of course, there are times we recommend it, but I think it involves a larger discussion that our communities have to have about destigmatizing the concept around mental health.
Sure, sure. What are the ways that me or any of my friends can support Narika and the movement to end domestic violence? May I ask?
So I would start by saying that one of the best things everyone can do is just get educated more about domestic violence, learn about it, attend talks. There's a lot of sessions, workshops, meetings around these concepts. I think it's important that we all get better knowledge about what domestic violence is, especially the various forms of abuse, and just recognize that we all play a role in perpetrating it, and we all play a role in the solution as well, because every time we have watched in silence as something is happening to someone we know, we are furthering the problem. And so it's easy to distance ourselves and say, well, it's another person's family, it's a family matter, etc. But really it is a community problem, and it should be seen as a community issue. And so I think getting educated, being more self-aware, and examining ourselves about how we are contributing to the problem is an important one. I would say volunteer with the organization. We do host counselor trainings that happen every quarter. So we are in the process of doing a counselor training, and in April we are opening it up again. So if anyone is interested in volunteering, I know Prabha started as a volunteer with Narika and then joined us on the team. So we strongly encourage it. Join as a volunteer, start learning this firsthand as a volunteer, a counselor or an advocate. And that is one of the best ways we'll all start learning how prevalent this issue is. I think a big conversation that comes up all the time is people say, it can't be happening in the Bay Area. Of course, it's happening in India, it's happening everywhere else, but we find it hard to believe it's happening here in our own turf. But it is. It's very, very, very prevalent in the Bay Area, just as it is everywhere else. And almost volunteering as an advocate will help us remember that it's. Yeah.
Coming to think of it, there are more variants here. First of all, the person, the abusive, not abusive, the lady, the woman is out of her comfort zone. She's out of her
Correct.
parents' home, and she has a visa at stake. She does not have a job invariably. She is financially dependent on her spouse. So there are so many factors
Yes.
that are at play
Yes.
that makes her more and more dependent on the person she's married to. Right?
Absolutely.
So that makes it more. If she was to stay back in India, she has a family network that can help her all the time, who's watching out for her, or grandmother or mother or whoever is watching out for her. And here she's all by herself, invariably with a child or two in hand, and not knowing how to deal with the situation. And the visa is a big deal here. That
Correct.
be a carrot that the husband or partner can be holding on to.
Absolutely. And what you're speaking to is really that social isolation with which
Right.
many of our clients will speak. They don't have a trusted network of friends and family.
Yes.
Oftentimes, the other piece we have to talk about and think about is also, if we know somebody in our family experiencing it, what is our response? And I think that's another place our community and all of us need to examine. Are we telling our women, no, it's okay, that's what everyone goes through, it's fine, you just hang in there, have kids, it'll be okay? If those are the responses we tell our women, whether it's our sister, whether it's our kids, whoever it is, this is another way that we perpetrate this violence, that by being silent, by almost being complicit and actually saying, no, it's okay, all of our women, our parents have gone through it, our kids will
Like,
also.
how our grandmothers, oh, just have a child, and then everything will be all right. No, we don't live in that generation anymore. We all have to, first of all, empower ourselves in all possible ways, learn, be educated, empower, be independent as much as possible before making sound decisions about marriage or children or whatever it is. What I
Absolutely.
would always suggest. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so, other ways that people can support is, apart from volunteering, is make a donation. I say to Narika, to any domestic violence organization. These are organizations that do difficult work. It's not the usual nonprofits around poverty or homelessness or education, but it's very, very important, critical work that requires funding to keep our doors open. The reason organizations can do this work for 3 decades is the funding and the support from our community. So we are able to do that work for free only if we get funding and support from our community. So we always recommend that. Join a board. We always recommend join the board of directors of organizations like Narika, etc. And you can help shape the vision and the charter of our organization as we continue. So these are all ways that people in our community can speak up, invite us to events like this, invite us to talks in your company. All of these are other ways that you can raise awareness about this issue and make it more commonplace. It shouldn't be topics that we just hear once in 9 months or so. Especially around the pandemic, domestic violence is being referred to by the UN as the shadow pandemic. It is just along with the pandemic, the fact that many of these clients had to be in lockdown with the person who was harming them, and nobody's thinking about it, but it is happening and it is real. And the best ways it comes to light for all of us is to be talking about it a lot more. So I urge you that if any of you are in community organizations, employee groups, etc., even university clubs, etc., call us, invite us, let's have discussions about it, because really it's a problem that affects all of us, and it might be closer to home than we think. Next thing we know, it might be someone that's being affected, or you might be affected, and it's important that we know these resources before we need it. So it's an open call to our community to
Also,
have
yeah,
this.
I'm also thinking we should widen the platform to be more inclusive, not just the South Asian community. I'm
Yes.
sure there are more. I mean, we're after all living in a foreign land, and it's not this problem exists only in the South Asian community. I know you're doing your best you can for the immigrant population, but I'm sure we can do a lot more to be more inclusive to the other immigrant populations also. The Far East community, the African American community, etc.,
Absolutely.
who are less educated than us.
Yeah. And even an open call to men. Sometimes I think this is an issue where it seems easier for our women to just sit in little groups and talk about this. But it is always, we all encourage having, these are conversations that can't be done in isolation, to your point. It has to happen in a group and with the larger community, because it takes all of us, not just some of us.
So talking about partners, how can, let's say, some conversations, some small conversations, some misunderstandings lead to minor conflicts. And sometimes, those conflicts just come back and we become friends between husband and wife. Sometimes these conflicts can blow up into bigger abusive I don't know, relationships or whatever it is. Small things, small bubbles can lead to bigger bubbles, and so it can be in a over period of time, it can blow up to bigger problems. How can partners in this case pitch in and then prevent such a abusive relationship from happening? If you can help that, that'll be helpful for the husbands who are listening to the show.
Yeah. So the important thing is to even sense that your partner is getting intimidated by something you say or do, right? Even recognizing that is a first step. If you don't even recognize, then it's hard to move forward, right? So even recognizing that something I'm doing is intimidating, it's like scaring her away, putting her off somehow, or him, either way, right? Recognizing that, I would say, is the first step. And then um, also, like, create a list. Okay, what are the situations when this is happening? What am I saying or what am I doing
Trigger
that's
points.
checkpoints? I'm sure there is a pattern, right? Is it financial issues that's bringing this up, or is it some time during the month, or is it
Okay.
as it's stress at work?
Mm.
Wait, is this happening every time I feel like I face stress at work? Is this happening or something? There must be
Did I mention a specific person's name or a relationship, or as you said, sometime in a month, or you never know what is causing the trigger.
we don't know what the trigger point is. So
Yeah.
if we can even recognize what those trigger points, and we are willing to sit down, then that itself is a step. Okay, I need this relationship to be better, right? And if both husband and wife are willing to talk about it, open communication, but also at the same time, if anger management is something that is necessary in the relationship, whether it's for one person or even both. Both people can be angry people in a relationship, right? And it can get the relationship gets even more toxic. So if one or both, going to maybe marriage counseling, anger management, right? And also offering the help to your partner, saying, you know what, I'm there with you if this is something, whether through therapy or through anger management, we need to take control of this to live further, right? Making a plan to make it better, right? Create a plan. And also each time make it very recognize. Once you've recognized, right, to saying, okay, maybe I should control myself. Okay, this might be a trigger point, so let me be careful. This week has been stressful at work, so maybe when I go home, rather than start a fight, maybe I'll go for a walk and burn it off. Maybe I'll go for a run, burn it off. Recognizing that trigger point and trying to control. But like Bindu said, therapists can help a lot. We should use them, because it's I think a lot among the South Asian community too. We don't think of therapy as an option to better our situation in any way.
I
I
agree.
don't think that's the first thing that comes to our mind.
Absolutely.
you know it's a taboo sometimes to go to a therapist, and that
Yeah.
shouldn't be the way it is. We should use the therapist, because that way, and even for the children affected in the
Really.
relationship, right? So in all this, we have like left out the children. The children are big time affected,
Yeah.
indirectly or directly. They are very
Mm.
affected in a domestic violence situation, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Thank you both for your time. Is a final way you want to convey to the listeners on how folks can reach out to your organization?
Yeah, so people can reach out to us through our phone number that is listed on our website, which is on www.narika.org. It's narika.org, or they can email us through the email address, and it's all listed on the website. Just I think final words from my side is if someone someone who's listening is affected by domestic violence, please know that it is not your fault and that there is help and things can get better, and you are not alone. So it's very important to recognize it may seem like you're alone, especially if you're in a foreign country, but there is help and there is support, and there are tons of people available to support you at NARIC and otherwise if you need that. So please generously reach out. Even if you don't know what you want to do and you just need support and you need someone to talk to, that's really what our organization is equipped to do. And all those conversations are confidential. So please reach out. You will get an advocate like Prabha or any of the fantastic people in our team. And we are always here to support you. So Sudha, thank you so much for the time. And hopefully this is reaching out to communities.
I feel very positive. I know I can pass this information over to many of my friends who have reached out to me. Thank you, Bindu. Thank you, Prabha. Bye-bye.
Sounds good. Thank you.